Hello, and welcome to Indie Dev Tools. Today, we'll expand the game object we made in the last video into shapes and text objects that can be drawn on screen. Shapes I mostly use for prototyping, but they could be useful elsewhere, and text objects are just a way to include text in your scene graph. This episode doesn't require much theory. The shapes we'll be using come in three sorts: rectangles, circles, and polygons. And the text object has a nice little wrap feature, but it doesn't get much deeper than that. So let's get right to coding, starting with shapes. At the top, we have a little helper function that creates a new shape and adds it to the scene graph. As you can see, the shape class extends the GameObject class, which means it has all the same methods. When you call super, it will call GameObject's constructor, giving the new shape all the properties of the GameObject as well. The default width and height for a GameObject is set to 0, but if you're making a shape, we can presume it will need to be seen, so I set the defaults here to 32. Now we add a couple things that a shape will need, but other GameObjects are unlikely to. Fill style, stroke style, and line width set the color and outline of the new shape, defaulting it to a red fill with no outline. Close shape will draw a line from the last point to the first point to close the outline of the shape. Start point and end point are specifically for circles and allow us to draw half and semicircles. The mask option will allow us to block out parts of any objects that are children of this object. There are some other things you can add if you like, but as I mentioned, I mostly use shapes for prototyping and have never had the need to. And then we have the render function. First, we set up the context with our variables from earlier. Then we create our path in one of three ways, and finally we optionally stroke or fill the shape, and/or tell the context to clip anything drawn after this. To know which of the three types of shape it is, we look at two properties that shapes inherit from GameObject: circular and points. Points is an array of vectors representing points in space. It needs at least 2 points to be able to draw a line. But first, we check to see if it exists, because if it doesn't, we're not dealing with a polygon. If we are not dealing with a polygon, then we check to see if circular is true. If it is, we have a circle. If not, we have a rectangle. Circles and rectangles are simple. They use the arc and rect functions mentioned in the first video on canvas operations. Rect takes the x and y locations of the top left corner, as well as the width and height of the rectangle. The arc function takes the x and y locations of the center of the circle, the radius and start and end points, and a boolean to tell us which direction to draw it. And then we have polygons. The way I've dealt with this is to inscribe them within the bounding box of the shape, so the points in the array should be encoded in a 0 to 1 scale if you want to stay within the confines of the shape, which you might if you want to use a circle or rectangle for collision. You can do collision on polygons directly with separation of axis theorem, but that is an advanced topic which I won't get to for quite a while. In the next video, we'll use circular and rectangular shapes to explore basic collision. But since we're extending GameObjects, let's take a quick look at what we can do with text. Like shape, it starts with a little helper function that attaches the new text object to the scene graph, and its constructor also calls GameObject's constructor with the super function. The unique properties of a text object are the baseline, font, and line height for formatting the text, fill style for color, and text for the actual text that will be written. There's also a boolean called wrap that can be set to false if you don't want your text to wrap. The render function first sets up the context, then either draws the text as is, or calls wrap text if wrap is set to true. The wrap function works by splitting the text up into words, then adding them one at a time to see if they are longer than the object is wide. If it is too long, it will draw the line, and the last word will become the start of the next line. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my supporters on Patreon. If you enjoy these videos, please leave a comment, like, or subscribe. Next video, things start to get really fun with collision. I hope to see you there.